Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. What happened when they banned cars? Infrastructure video. Hi, guys. Let's find out. Let's learn, shall we? City Beautiful, great channel. Preemptive like. Let's start. All the links where they always are.
Has its main street. You know, the street that's every city has its main street.
The original link to this video, top description, and other links, guys. All right.
You know, the street that's most likely to host a parade. In San Francisco, that's Market Street. Market Street is a straight shot from the ferry building in Embarcadero along the waterfront to the hills in the center of the city. It's also unique because it serves as the seam between two different urban grids. It's been a busy and sometimes chaotic street for over a century. This footage, taken mere weeks before the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, shows the bustling street complete with cars, transit, and pedestrians all jostling for space. Other archival footage shows essentially the same traffic but in different eras. Here's the street in 1941, and here it is again in 1955. Main streets like this are meant to be busy and bustling, but shows essentially the same traffic but in different eras. Here's the street in 1941, and here it is again in 1955. Main streets like this are meant to be busy and bustling, but traffic can make it so that all users, regardless of mode, find it hard to use. That's what happened with Market Street, and over the years, numerous attempts were made to solve the congestion problems. One 1960 proposal called for a monorail to run along the street. The BART metro system opened along the corridor in 1972.
I heard in another video that monorails are super just not good. And I remember, Disneyland creating a monorail system. I've ridden on it when I was a kid, and they did it for aesthetic reasons. But if for something other than aesthetic reasons, like something in a city, there's something really inefficient or something wrong with monorails that I can't remember, but I know that there was.
But traffic issues lingered even while Market Street went into a decline. City residents were moving to the suburbs, and stores and offices went with them. Finally, in 2009, the city began a program known as Better Market Street to improve traffic and help provide the iconic corridor. Between 2009 and 2020, the city began restricting private vehicle movement along parts of the street to reduce congestion and conflicts between transit vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, and cars. And in January 2021, almost exactly a year ago, the city prohibited private vehicles on Market Street. How did it go? Well, car traffic did not get worse on adjacent streets, and transit vehicles are able to move through the corridor faster, and on-time performance jumped. Market Street is just one example of a street that got better once the city banned cars. And while the city is making physical changes to the street to better accommodate this new transportation mix, it doesn't really take much more than some signage and paint to get started. Let's take a tour of some streets that have simply removed private cars and seen some impressive...
Just a quick question. Okay, so right here, for example, so that makes complete sense that having a main street that it is illegal to drive private cars, private vehicles on it, it can make a lot of sense. And why not have short tunnels that go under main streets so that cars that are driving on either side of the main street, if they need to go across, that they can do so, or maybe just go around, I guess. But yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Let's take a tour of some streets that have simply removed private cars and seen some impressive benefits. After the bike belt. Before we check out another US-based example, we must first make the requisite tour of superior urbanism abroad. It's not uncommon for high streets in England to restrict private vehicles and only allow delivery vehicles and transit. It's incredibly common to see streets in Europe meant for trams and people and bikes. And Europe doesn't have a monopoly on nice tram streets. George Street in Sydney is another great example of the genre. Just look at that tram, isn't it great? A lot of these European and Australian examples look like they've been designed or redesigned to perfectly accommodate transit and people. They've taken a street that looks like it was designed for cars, just without cars, to something we in the US would classify as a transit mall. These are streets where transit is the #1 priority and is designed to reflect that fact. Here in the United States, some cities operate transit malls too. Let's take a look at the spectrum of car use on streets for a second. I think pedestrian malls or plazas and transit malls are the final evolution of streets. They've been purposely designed for their mode and they don't allow cars on them. They are amazing. On the other end of the spectrum are the suburban arterials that are outright hostile to anyone not in a car. In fact, they're even dangerous for people in cars with their high speeds and multiple lanes. In between, we have a variety of safer streets that accommodate a mix of modes. I want to focus on the spot in the spectrum where Market Street is. It's still designed to be a fairly normal street, but there are no cars allowed. Functionally, it may be about the same as many transit malls, but it still hasn't grown into that evolution from a design perspective. It's still an Ivysaur waiting to become a Venusaur, if you know what I mean. Okay. Though the metaphor doesn't really work because Bulbasaurs are adorable and suburban
best Pokemon ever. My favorite.
Arterials are terrible. Anyway, let's go look at a particularly nice Ivysaur in Madison, Wisconsin. State Street runs between the campus of the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the country's nicest state capitol right in the middle of Capitol Square. At first glance, it may look like a normal street. It's got your normal sidewalk, curb, gutter, and street trees. But what it doesn't have is private vehicles. In 1974, cars were banned. Madison did redesign the street, but their primary change was making the sidewalks wider while keeping the curb and gutter. Today, the roadway can be used by buses, delivery vehicles, and emergency vehicles, and that's about it. Pedestrians tend to stay on the sidewalks as vehicles come often enough to keep them out. But the lack of cars makes it a really pleasant street. It's quieter and calmer. State Street proves that removing cars can work on a major street, just like Market Street in San Francisco. If there are two things that people know about Madison, it's that it's the Wisconsin State Capitol and the home of UW-Madison. If there are two more things people should know, it's that it has a soccer team with one of the best crests ever, and it's one of my favorite cities. I mean, look at that isthmus.
Wow, that's great.
But the point is that the State Street connects the Capitol and the university, two major job centers. That's the kind of situation where you'd expect a lot of traffic. Yet by banning cars altogether, State Street sidesteps that issue. And the great thing about banning cars on streets is that spillover traffic to other parallel streets either doesn't happen or happens in small numbers. It's sort of like the opposite of induced demand. If adding lanes on a highway encourages more people to drive on it, reducing car lanes downtown discourages people from driving there. It also shows that retail can survive without cars. State Street has been a mix of quirky local restaurants and shops mixed with national chains for as long as I can remember. Even in the cold, cold Wisconsin winters, people are okay with braving the elements on foot to shop or dine. In fact, a study of retail businesses on the corridor found that it was losing shops in the post-war years to suburban shopping centers, and removing cars actually brought businesses back. Now, many of those people...
It looks pretty similar to Providence. It's the capital of my state, Rhode Island, best state. And I think Providence is pretty good. All right. I think it's, as far as cities go, in the Northeast especially, it's got kind of its own charm. It's not too big, but it's not too small. I'm biased, obviously.
People might be college students who might be more able-bodied and robust than the rest of us. And indeed, having a high residential density nearby, like college students in dorms, certainly helps businesses and the viability of a car-free street. Having two major anchors at either end of a relatively short street, only 1.2 kilometers, also helps. But Madison isn't the only city in the United States with a busy street in a dense area. There are plenty of state streets waiting to happen in cities around the country. There's another great, more recent example of banning cars, this time on the East Coast. The 14th Street busway in Manhattan began as a pilot in 2019 and was made permanent in 2020. 14th Street forms the northern boundary of Lower Manhattan and runs by Union Square. The busway is designated between 3rd and 9th Avenues. It's a major transit corridor. The L train runs underneath the street, and many of New York City's subway lines connect along 14th. I know that the term busway makes it sound suspiciously like a transit mall, but we're still in Ivysaur territory here. The city simply painted bus truck only on red paint at every intersection. Cars making local trips are still allowed, and it's open to all traffic between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Those small changes, though, have made a big difference. The M14 Select Bus Service, New York's version of express buses, now runs 9 minutes faster on the corridor, while traffic on parallel streets barely runs slower. Ridership is up too, which is no surprise now that the bus is extra express. As a bonus, cycling is also increased. Market Street, State Street, and 14th Street are all proof that you don't need to do much to ban cars, and for little effort, you can see some outcomes ranging from not much change to big improvements.
I think this is something that it wouldn't take a lot to get people on board. The idea of a whole city becoming, redoing infrastructure to make it more car friendly or whatever, going to be a lot of legislation and fighting and stalling. But something like this, where you just make a main street unavailable to private cars and give private cars a way to get around it, obviously, is something much more appealing and less scary in the way that you're going to maybe change something unintentionally or have to spend a lot of money. So yeah, it's easier to get aboard.
Francisco to see what they did to make Market Street car free and how they plan to take their Ivysaur into Venusaur territory. The city conducted a survey of road users after they initially closed Market Street to private vehicles. One of the primary concerns voiced was not about eliminating cars, but not doing enough to make it safe to bike. It's not enough just to get rid of private cars when bikes still have to share lanes with taxis and trucks. People called for a dedicated curb lane for bikes, and the city largely agreed. The fully redesigned Market Street would go curbless like many of those European tram streets and have dedicated lanes for trolley buses and buses. And there's the dedicated curbside bike lanes. Market Street sidewalks are already quite wide but would receive amenity upgrades, like better lighting and street furnishings. The overall goal is to create a cohesive design for the corridor, designed with the idea that there would no longer be private cars on it. But the beauty of San Francisco's approach is that they started the same way the 14th Street busway started, with some signs and paint. Their quick build project proved that removing cars from a busy main street was not only possible, but preferable. The city has its eye on major upgrades to the street to make it San Francisco's Champs-Élysées, but finding it harder to accomplish than originally thought. But the public seems to fundamentally agree that no cars is the right move and can benefit from that decision while the city figures out how to evolve the corridor. I hope that Market Street can rival some of the best streets in Europe someday, one of those fancy tram streets I talked about at the beginning. But if you want to hear even more about European trams, I have you covered. I've uploaded a bonus video on the fascinating history of European tram streets over on Nebula. And if you're not interested in trams, well, I might still have you covered. I have 6 other videos not available on YouTube, and I add a new one each month. I also have 16 videos with bonus content not available on YouTube.
Guys, just like with all videos, it's not my content. I'm watching it with you guys. And so any of the stuff you might be interested in, just please use their links if you find it here.
There are tons of other exclusive videos on Nebula too, from real life lore, mustard, and more. And as another bonus, there aren't any ads like this on Nebula. The deal gets even better because Nebula is bundled with CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream is the source for high-quality, engaging documentaries.
I'm going to continue, but I just want to say, I'm going to go through the ad, but I think that allowing only certain, having public traffic makes it so much easier because you have so many personal drivers in their own cars to be able to precisely calibrate, what's wrong, what's slowing down over here. And when you have only trams or buses or some trucks and whatnot that are tied to a company or a service in the city, then you can really see and fix it much more without crazy personal variables with personal cars. You know what I mean? So that definitely makes sense.
You'll
Cool
love
video.
the Cities of Tomorrow series that tackles topics like vertical farming, smart cities, and the process of creating brand new cities. It's the perfect series for someone interested in cities, like you probably are. We have a great deal where if you sign up for CuriosityStream using the link below, you get Nebula for free. It's not a free trial, but free as long as you're a CuriosityStream member. And they're running a special deal where you can get an entire year for 26% off. That's less than $15 a year for CuriosityStream and Nebula. Signing up is a great way of supporting this channel, as well as the dozens of other great creators working to make Nebula a success.
Thanks for watching, guys.
It's just a really overall great deal, too. So click on the link on the screen and get 26% off.
Really cool video. I love the channel. And yeah, it seems like it's something that you could initiate without much funding and without much worry about a massive project having unintended effects, which is what I worry about. Just because it's like, oh, look at Europe, it works here, therefore work in America. I don't think that people, even though that might be reasonable, I don't think people think like that. I think at the end of the day, they're apprehensive when big change comes, but this isn't big change, and it just kind of makes sense without much downside for people against it. So. Really cool video. Hope you guys are all doing well. Love you guys. And I'll see you guys next time. Would love to see any answers to my questions or comments in general. Bye, guys.